Subway has a very strange past, present, and future. It was once one of the fastest growing fast food restaurants in the country. It had the most store locations in the US out of any fast food joint, and it had some of the most memorable and successful ad campaigns ever, which is why it's so strange that it just started to fail out of the blue, like miserably. The fall of Subway happened because of a series of very unfortunate events in a very small amount of time. And today I thought we'd take a look at the sandwich giant becoming a sandwich small end. When was the last time you had Subway? I'm genuinely asking, because I love Subway and I haven't eaten there in like 2 years. And I started doing some research and I realized that like a lot of people haven't been eating there for a long time. But before we get into that, we have to talk about the birth of Subway and how it got so popular in the first place. I'd like you to meet Fred DeLuca and Peter Buck, couple of handsome fellas. These guys are the dudes that invented Subway. Fred was a broke college student in 1965, and he decided the best way for him to make money was to create a sandwich shop, because of course that's what everyone does. With the help of Peter Buck, Fred opened up Pete's Subway. They named it after Pete because he was the dude with all the money. Subway was basically the first fast food restaurant to serve something other than burgers and fries. So shout out to Fred for that one. A couple of years after the first Subway was made, they decided to open up a second shop. But not because the first one was very successful. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was successful, but like Pete only opened up the second store to make it look like they were doing better than they actually were, which is kind of like a fucking 500 IQ play because it worked. People started pouring into the restaurants and they continued to grow and open more restaurants into the Subway that we know now. So how did they fail? Well, it turns out a lot of reasons. And not just that one reason that I know you're thinking about. But trust me, we're going to get to that. Stick around to the end for that one. So remember how I said they faked being successful by opening up a bunch more restaurants? Well, Subway never really stopped doing that. Subway opened up like restaurant after restaurant and just spread across the US like the fucking plague. They were able to do this because Subways function differently than other restaurants. Subway allows pretty much anyone to open up their own Subway store. And because of that, people take advantage. I mean, if you're a person who has the means to open up a restaurant, but you just don't know what you want to do, I mean, why not just go with something that you already know is going to be super successful and immediately make profit? I mean, it would be dumb not to. So people did that. But that became a massive, massive problem. As more and more Subways opened up, they started to take away money from each other. Look at this clip from Business Insider.
Take downtown Manhattan, for example. Within a 15-minute walk in less than half a square mile, there are 10 Subway locations.
There were too many Subways. Because they were all so packed together, they started to eat up each other's revenue. I mean, it costs a lot of money to operate just one restaurant. And if the Subway down the street is stealing your customers, then it's just really hard to survive. This issue really started to cause major problems in 2015, which is a year you're going to hear mentioned a lot in this video. Subways around the country rapidly started closing all their doors simply because it just was not profitable enough anymore. Quick little interruption here. We're so fucking close to getting to 100 subs, dude. If you would have told me that 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't fucking believe you. I know that's a tiny little milestone, but you know what? Fuck you. It means something to me, bitch. Y'all have been so supportive for no reason. All of the comments on all of my videos have been nice, and that doesn't really happen. So thank you. Subway's had a few lawsuits and a few rumors in its history, I guess you could say. The most famous example of this is when Subway got sued because their footlong was only 11 inches. They were sued for a lot of money, but eventually settled in court for just over $500,000. But $500,000 is not the only thing they lost when that lawsuit happened. For some reason, the footlong case was a catalyst for a catastrophic amount of hate thrown towards Subway. It like almost became cool to just hate Subway. There were lawsuits about their tuna not being real tuna. There were lawsuits about their bread not even being bread. They said the sugar content in the bread was too high and that it needs to be classified as cake. That really happened. Yeah, the whole Eat Fresh brand image got fucking killed. when all those rumors were getting spread around. And even though the lawsuits and rumors may not have been that accurate, they might as well have been. Because people in the general public saw this stuff going down with Subway and were like, you know what? I'm just going to keep me and my family away from this because I don't want anything going on with that. I'll just go to Jimmy John's. Speaking of Jimmy John's, the other emerging sandwich shops like Quiznos, Firehouse Subs, Jimmy John's, and Potbelly were all waiting there with open arms as Subway just fucking fell apart in front of their eyes. And as people began eating there a lot of Subway regulars made the transition into other places. Like I mentioned earlier, 2015 was a bad year for Subway. It was especially bad for Fred DeLuca, the creator of Subway, because he died. DeLuca was diagnosed with leukemia in 2013 and battled for 2 years until he eventually died in 2015. His death sent Subway even deeper into its spiral of failure. Fred was actually like an awesome CEO. He cared so much about Subway, he used to go undercover as a customer and order sandwiches just to make sure that the standards of Subway weren't falling. He cared so much. And the other suits that oversaw Subway did not. Right after his passing, Subway sales plummeted almost immediately. He spent years pouring his heart and soul into this place just for it to die with him. That's so sad, man. Subway has two of the most successful ad campaigns in history. And yet somehow, both ad campaigns are also what caused their downfall. If you were alive during the $5 footlong era, then you have this song burned in your head. Not only was this song a banger, but the cheap sandwich was pretty good too. I mean, $5 for a fucking foot-long sandwich? Are you fucking kidding me? That's a lot of food for $5, dude. And people knew it too. People began flocking to Subways to get their hands on that deal. But here's the thing. Subway really couldn't afford it. As things like inflation and other costs increased, it became increasingly difficult for Subway to maintain that $5 price point. And eventually they were just losing money every time they sold the footlong, which isn't too good of a business model, guys. Just saying. But the $5 footlong was like so iconic. They were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Basically, it boiled down to, do we keep the price point and lose money, or do we change the price and lose all of our customers? It's sort of a lose-lose situation. Obviously, eventually they had to raise the price. I mean, otherwise it would have just continuously lost money and eventually gone bankrupt. But the hole left by the previous Subway customers was immense. Okay, now we can talk about the giant predator in the room. Subway got very popular because of its healthier food options compared to the other fast food restaurants. That's why the Eat Fresh slogan was so synonymous with Subway. One morbidly obese man actually lost 245 pounds by eating Subway twice a day, every day. This man's name was Jared Fogle. His weight loss journey actually made it into the local newspaper, and Subway eventually heard this story and decided to reach out to him. Jared would become the new spokesman for Subway. I mean, he was the perfect fit at the time, and the proof was in the pudding. You eat Subway twice a day, you're going to lose weight. They made a bunch of commercials with Jared holding up his like quadruple XL pantalones, and this ad campaign was so successful, it's ridiculous. And unfortunately for Subway, they became absolutely synonymous with this guy. So much so that if you said at the time, hey, you know that Subway guy? People would just be like, yeah, what about him? But all of that would come crashing down to a disgusting, putrid, foul end. In the year 2015, Jared Fogle would be sentenced to 15 years in prison for numerous accounts of possession of child pornography and sex crimes involving minors. Not cool, Jared. Don't do that, dude. What the fuck? Because of Jared's little outbursts, Subway was also dragged down with him. It's really hard to run a successful business when the first thing people think about when they see it is sex with minors. It just isn't going to work. You're not going to be successful. And that's literally what happened to Subway. You can't fucking make this shit up. 2015 took Subway and wiped its filthy asshole with it, man. 2015 said, fuck Subway, bro. I hate that shit. But yeah, like at the beginning of the video, I said I hadn't been to Subway in a long time. And all this research made me realize that I should probably give it another try. So I went to Subway. And I realized why I don't go to Subway anymore. When I pulled up to the subway. There was only one car in the parking lot. And I thought, oh, that's strange. Well, as I got closer, I saw that there was a woman sitting on the hood of the car, smoking a cigarette while on FaceTime with somebody. At first I thought, that's cool. You do you, girl. I'm not judging. But then I realized she was sitting on the only car in the parking lot, meaning she had to be the sandwich artist of this particular subway. And my suspicions were correct. So I walked in the subway and I had to wait for her to finish smoking her cigarette and finish her phone call to come in and make my sandwich. I ordered a meatball sub, which is what I've been ordering since I was 5 years old. And when she started making the sub, she didn't say a single word to me the entire time. The subway I went to was literally 3 minutes down the street from my house, which is why it's so strange to me that when I got home and opened the sandwich, the wrapping paper was already soaking wet and sticking to my fucking sandwich. I decided to run some scientific tests on my footlong, and it turns out that my sandwich was actually a foot long. Subway learned the lesson. They're not going through that shit again. So as I sat down and began to munch, I realized it was really hard to eat the whole thing, which is really surprising because I used to pound these things down like a fucking starved caveman, dude. But maybe it's because I was only eating an 11-inch sandwich and not a foot long at the time. Anyway, the bread was stale and the meatballs were cold on the inside. Will I ever eat Subway again? Yeah, absolutely I will. I will continue to keep crawling back to it like every 2 years or so, just so I can feel something.